Good evening and welcome to Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, your place for a fun conversation about horror movies. Tonight we go back to the golden era of 1980s horror for an old classic featuring Tom Atkins and Bruce Campbell. We'll also talk about a couple of other films featuring ghosts and shark attacks. I guess I should be clear that that's two separate films, one with ghosts and one with shark attacks. We're not talking about ghost sharks. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're glad to have you here. Now sit back and grab your popcorn because here we go.
Careful now.
You say that every night.
All right, what seems to be the trouble, officer?
Oh, no. I think he wants you to go with him.
I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how.
Just don't come near me.
Gina, this isn't about romance. It's about murder.
Jesus. Maniac Cop? How's that for a tag?
Take a look at the size of those hematomas.
Let him go, Cordell!
How you doing, beautiful?
It all depends.
Would you like a lift someplace?
Let's get to our featured film review for the evening. Tonight we are talking about a film called Maniac Cop. Yes, Maniac Cop. Pretty much says it all right there in the title. This is a horror slasher film, if you did not gather that from the title. It was released in the year 1988, directed by William Lustig. And the cast includes a number of names you'll recognize from other horror movies. The cast includes Tom Atkins, Bruce Campbell, Lorraine Landon, Richard Roundtree, William Smith, Robert Zadar, and Sherry North. So let's get into a conversation about Maniac Cop. If you're going to sit down and watch Maniac Cop, what you should expect is a run-of-the-mill 80s slasher feature. That's it. I could use more words there, but it's not really going to flesh out the movie anymore. It's just a run-of-the-mill 80s slasher feature. It is not disappointing. It is not overtly satisfying. It is not fantastic. It is just run-of-the-mill. If you like Friday the 13th, you might like Maniac Cop. If you like films like Graduation Day or maybe Pieces, you'll like Maniac Cop. Let's get into calibrating your sights for this. This is the scale we like to use. On the far left side of the scale, we have very campy films such as Jason X. On the far right side of the scale, we have very serious films such as The Silence of the Lambs. As always, this scale is not intended to tell you the quality of the movie, but is intended to tell you what your mindset needs to be going into the movie if you're going to enjoy it. Maniac Cop, yeah, you can pretty much gather from the title. It's almost all the way over to the left. This is not a film to be taken seriously. It is very campy. Now, they play it straight. It is not an overt comedy. There's not a lot of laugh lines or anything like that. But that's part of the humor of the film, is all these characters playing it straight when it's so ridiculous. So, that's what you should expect if you watch Maniac Cop. Set your sights pretty much to the very campy side of the spectrum. Now, before we go any farther, we need to do our vocabulary lesson for this episode. Our vocabulary lesson, of course, is the part of the show where we discuss new and innovative words and phrases in an effort to stay ahead of social media bots and algorithms that would otherwise try to ban our conversation. Social media bots and algorithms are always expanding and evolving, therefore our language must evolve to stay ahead of them. 2 terms this week. Our first term is trapdoor snatching. Trapdoor snatching is a noun referring to the action of an assailant quickly opening a door or window, nabbing a victim, and pulling the victim back through the door or window. In that respect, not dissimilar to another term we've had from a while back called cash drawing, where you get yanked under the bed. Our second term is Pez dispensing. This is a recap of a term we have done before, and this one's pretty self-explanatory, but just in case. Pez dispensing is a noun referring to the action of pulling a character's head backwards and then running a sharp object across the character's now exposed esophagus. Please keep these terms in mind. They will become important later in the episode. So let's get into a summary of this film. If you're going to sit down and watch Maniac Cop, what you're going to get is the story that starts with a waitress fleeing from a pair of muggers. And she approaches who she believes to be a police officer, hoping to get help from the police officer. Unfortunately, the officer then strangles her. Yes, really. Soon the city is awash in reports of people being attacked and murdered by someone in a police uniform. Is it a policeman? Is it somebody posing as a policeman? We don't know. Lieutenant Frank McRae is assigned to investigate the case. He investigates the murders and is led to Officer Jack Forrest, who becomes the prime suspect after Forrest's wife becomes one of the murder victims. However, McRae is not so sure that Forrest is the guy. Is there something much stranger going on? Something that leads all the way to City Hall. And that leads us to our villain profile. Our villain for this film is Officer Matt Cordell. Here you see him driving the police paddy wagon. He is of the class of undead or near-dead slasher. You never really get a backstory on exactly how he has come about to be in his current condition. So it's not really made clear if he is just nearly dead and came back to life, or if he is indeed an undead zombie of some sort. But we do know that he is immensely strong, he's a very big guy, and he is invulnerable to bullets. And his signature weapon, if you paid attention in the preview, you may have seen the officer's nightstick that contains a hidden surprise. Yes, a very lengthy blade contained inside the officer's nightstick. So that's our villain profile for this film. Let's talk about the things I liked about this film. Right off the bat, every frame of this film screams 1980s. There's just no way around it. This film is from 1988, so it's from the latter part of the 80s, but still, it screams 80s. Has all, or at least most of the 80s tropes that you would expect. It has the colors, the sounds, everything you would expect from a 1980s horror film. The movie strikes a decent balance between creating a backstory and keeping the action moving. So the movie is not just non-stop violence and killing. There is the attempt to create a backstory. However, the backstory does not bog the film down too badly. So the action does keep moving. There is a surprisingly high kill count for the first film in a horror franchise. Maniac Cop was the first of 3 films, followed by Maniac Cop 2, and yes, you guessed it, Maniac Cop 3. Surprisingly high kill count for the first film in a horror franchise. Normally you would expect something on the order of 8 to 10. This film is significantly higher. This cast brings together a lot of B-movie all-stars, including Bruce Campbell, who you know from The Evil Dead, Tom Atkins, who you know from Halloween 3 or maybe The Fog, and Robert Z'Dar, who you know from a number of B-movies. Of course, it's a movie called Maniac Cop. There are things that could have been better. You know there are things that could have been better when you've got a film called Maniac Cop. So let's just talk about a few of those. Right off the bat, this is a perfectly ordinary 1980s slasher film. It is no better or worse than dozens of other examples. It is not a bad film. It is not an outstanding film. It is a little bit slow in the middle. Some of that effort to create some backstory and intrigue for you does slow things down a little bit. It is typical 1980s slasher film in terms of the caliber of acting that you should expect, which is to say, the acting is not that great, but it is typical for the films of the time. On some level, the killer's motivation does not make any sense. Now, that is not uncommon for an 80s slasher film. The motivation is just kind of window dressing to give you an excuse for the action sequences in this film. But you understand why the Maniac Cop, Officer Matt Cordell, would have it in for some of his victims. Others, innocent people, you don't understand why he would have it in for them at all if he's just gone completely evil and is attacking everybody. And finally, the ending is very abrupt. We get no resolution or closure with any of the main characters. Now, footnote, you do get some resolution or closure because many of the main characters come back for the second film, Maniac Cop 2. But if you sit down and watch Maniac Cop by itself, it just kind of ends. It ends and it's over, and you don't necessarily know what's going to happen with any of the main characters. You don't get any resolution. So let's get to Steve's scorecard for this film. Right off the bat, kills. I counted 18. Now, some of these happen off screen, but still, that is a large number for the first film in a horror franchise. Bare breasts, drum roll please. We have none. That is the one trope of 1980s movies that we do not get in Maniac Cop. There is no shower scene, there are no bare breasts. Noggin removal. Again, we get none. Everyone's head stays attached in this film. Possuming. Possuming, of course, meaning to be flattened by a motor vehicle. Possumings, we have one. Trapdoor snatching, our vocabulary term from earlier, we have two. Pez dispensing, our other vocabulary term from earlier, we also have two. And finally, incidents in the prison shower. Oh yes, I went there. Incidents in the prison shower, we have one. No, it's not what you're thinking, for crying out loud, people. The officer is attacked in the prison shower by the other inmates. But with your viewing of Maniac Cop, you also get some bonus features, such as a New York City tag team mugging action. You get trombone case action. Yes, one of Officer Cordell's victims is carrying a trombone case. It is not ever explained why he is carrying a trombone case. You get a Tom Atkins sighting. Tom Atkins, whom I remember most from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, but also from movies like The Fog. You get a Bruce Campbell sighting. Bruce Campbell, of course, famous for the Evil Dead franchise. You get cheap motel action. You get CPR action. In fact, you get slow motion CPR action in a flashback scene. You get St. Patrick's Day action, which is to say you get a lot of stock footage of St. Patrick's Day parades from New York City kind of stitched together to make a scene from the movie. You get literal dead weight, as the heroine is handcuffed to somebody who is then killed and she has to drag him around. And finally, you got a bit of this in the preview again. Take a look at the size of those hematomas. Yes, somebody really wrote a line of dialogue that said, take a look at the size of those hematomas, and it's not a euphemism. It is meant literally. So let's get to Steve's final score for this film. We're going to give it 2.5 paws out of 4. We're going to say this is a disappointingly routine 80s slasher film that does nothing particularly wrong, but does nothing impressive either. It's run-of-the-mill, like we said at the beginning of the review. It is no worse than a dozen other movies you can find from the time period. It is no better than a dozen other movies you could find from the time period. It is just kind of there. But that is our featured film review for the evening, Maniac Cop. That is our featured film review, and that wraps it up for the evening. And now a word from our benevolent overlords at PBDC TV, your nightly heartbeat of horror.
Oakhurst Lunatic Asylum, case number 094. Dr. Mortimer Thornfield recording. Patient 0478, Stephen Peakity Cat. Often referring to himself as Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Diagnosis, Morbius Organizers Disorder, or MOD. Observation, patient exhibits an artistically delightful and disturbed mind, the patient's pursuit of selling t-shirts and merchandise that celebrate the macabre and the horrifying has led to the diagnosis of morphosis organismus disorder, a condition that melds artistic madness with a twisted appreciation for the darker side of cinema. Treatment plan being that the patient's products are of a perfect embodiment of their twisted artistic vision and the unique nature of the condition. Procurement of said merchandise is recommended.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
In the southeast of America, in the quiet town of Quinton, located in Walker County, Alabama, a nightmare is about to unfold. To young friends embarking on a road trip, little did they know they were about to stumble upon a horrifying tale that would forever haunt their souls. They had no idea that their journey would lead them to the infamous Spook Trail family, deranged haunted maze makers known for their twisted ways and insatiable hunger to scare. But the question remains, will anyone make it out alive? Brace yourself, for the frights are about to begin.
Mayday! Mayday! Can you hear us? We need help. I repeat, we need help.
Oakhurst Lunatic Asylum, case number 1972. Dr. Mortimer Thornfield recording. Patients 04853 through 04857, known as the Psycho Bunnies. Their true identities are unknown to me at this time. Diagnosis: Eccentricus malevolentis disorder, or EMD. The patients seem to have inclinations of a twisted and unconventional artistic talents, exhibiting a disconcerting combination of insanity, disorderliness, and a penchant for the macabre. Observation: their collective behavior and unyielding commitment to selling t-shirts and merchandise that revel in the darker aspects of existence have led to the diagnosis of eccentricus malevolentis disorder, a condition that merges artistic eccentricity with a delightfully wicked sense of humor. Treatment plan: the patient's relentless obsession with creating and selling t-shirts adorned with sinister slogans, macabre imagery, and morbid humor is a defining symptom of their condition. Therefore, procurement of said merchandise is recommended.
Now, back to the show.
We've reached the end of another episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, but before we go, we're going to take just a minute to talk about some of the other stuff I watched this week. We're going to talk about two films this week, starting with this one called Hallows Grove. Hallows Grove is a 2014 American independent horror film. Had no theatrical release, it went directly to digital on-demand and download. It features McKelty Williamson and Lance Henriksen in brief appearances, but is primarily a cast of unknowns. McKelty Williamson in particular has about a minute and a half at the beginning of the movie and a minute and a half at the end to bookmark the film. Other than that, he's not in the film. Lance Henriksen's in a couple of scenes, but still a brief appearance. The film is found footage, and it is found footage shot by a documentary filmmaker following a group of paranormal investigators. He follows them to an abandoned orphanage and hospital named Hallows Grove. Hallows Grove has a very sad and frightening history, which they detail for you as the film unfolds. As the evening progresses, the team encounters phenomena that grow increasingly frightening and dangerous. Now, what I enjoyed about this film is the fact that it portrays paranormal investigators as unserious and fake, which I just loved. The team features a special effects artist, played by Lance Henriksen, who arrives on site early to set up sight and sound gags in secret, which the team will find as they investigate. So they make no bones about this, that what they're doing is fake. At least off camera, they make no bones about the fact that what they're doing is fake. On camera, they play it straight, but off camera, this is not your typical paranormal found footage film where, oh yeah, I've seen some things. We just have to play a few things up for the cameras. No, these guys just set everything up and they make no bones about it. It takes some time for the team to realize that the strange sights and sounds they are experiencing are in fact real. So if you watch this film, you're treated to things such as cat flinging action, ghost harassing action, stair tumbling action, creepy little kid ghosts, gratuitous camera glitches. It's a found footage paranormal film after all. It's going to have gratuitous camera glitches. And on the pro side, the straight up fakery of the team's show is a welcome change to the typical paranormal found footage film. At least it was for me. On the con side, the film is a little bit too slow to develop. The verdict of this one is meh. It's no better or worse than a dozen other found footage films with a similar premise. Grave Encounters comes to mind. It's not a bad film, not a great film. If you enjoy found footage paranormal films, probably worth giving a watch, but you won't think at the end of the day that it's that radically different from many of the others that you've seen. We also watched something else this week, something called Shark Night, or Shark Night 3D it was called in its theatrical release. This is a 2011 American horror film, originally released in theatrical 3D, and if you don't believe that, watch the film and there's plenty of in-your-face stuff that would only make sense to shoot in a 3D film. In this film, a typical collection of college students and their dog get together at a secluded house on a lake in Louisiana. While they're there, they discover that the lake contains a very large and aggressive man-eating shark. Now, this is not as silly as it sounds. It is a saltwater lake. They do explain how the lake is connected to the Gulf and how shark could have gotten from the Gulf into the lake. And that's not unprecedented. Lake Pontchartrain, not unusual to find bull sharks in Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana. As the trapped students try to get help, they dig deeper into the mystery of why there are sharks in the lake. And yes, sharks, plural. Not just man-eating shark, man-eating sharks, plural. So if you watch this film, you will be treated to severed arm fetching action. Yeah, you probably expect somebody to have an arm bitten off. What you don't expect is for somebody to dive in and try to fetch the arm so they can hopefully get it surgically reattached. You get miraculous recovery and quest for revenge. You get shark hunting with a spear. You get a guy with pointy shark teeth. Yes, really. You get cookie cutter shark action, which, gotta admit, is kind of cool. Cookie cutter sharks don't get a lot of credits in shark movies. And you get Dog Overboard, which is something that I have not seen since Zombievers. On the pro side, this is an entirely predictable, silly shark attack movie. We love our silly shark attack movies here at Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. On the con side, the backstory behind the sharks is too implausible, even for a silly shark attack movie. So it's just too ridiculous. At the end of the day, you want to avoid this one unless you are a fan of dumb shark attack films. If you're a fan of dumb shark attack films, go ahead and give it a watch. You'll enjoy it as much as you enjoyed any of the others. It's better production values, at least, than some of the stuff you get from, say, The Asylum. But at the end of the day, not that much radically better. It's just a dumb shark attack film, so if that's your thing, enjoy. If not, stay away from this one. Anyway, that is Shark Night, and that is some of the other stuff I watched this week. Well, that wraps up this episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Thank you so much for joining us. We're glad you're here. If you did enjoy the show, then please check us out on social media. You can find Steve the Cat on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So please stop by and hit that subscribe button. Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat is available exclusively through the PBDC Collective Incorporated. Now legally incorporated and still your heartbeat of horror. You can find us on the web at psychobunnydc.com, or you can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, Rumble, and Discord. Now, the Discord site is for members only, so if you're interested, please go to psychobunnydc.com and click the link for an invitation. We'll be back again in 2 weeks to talk about an old classic from the early 90s. It's sure to be a lot of fun, so make sure to join us every other Monday night at 10 p.m. That's all for now, so until next time, thank you for joining us and have a great week.